for the same care. We must insist upon the right to access social media and to payment processing. This should be a starting point for any GOP candidate. If they won't support that, then they're not worth supporting themselves. We have allowed the GOP to lose its way. If it is your desire to open the borders, invade the world, and then invite them all here, caring for them, and then bankrupting silencing any American citizen who opposes us, you already have the party. That is the Democratic Party. The GOP must be a viable alternative, and without a solid platform to nail undoubtedly, they simply are not that. The last thing I would say is that things aren't as bleak as they sound. I know after everything I just said here, you're probably surprised to hear that. More and more people are waking up as to what is happening. We are growing. Trump was a start, not an end. We must enshrine our beliefs into actionable policies and refuse to support a party or a candidate that does not push to achieve those goals. To quote Margaret Mead, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing it ever has. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. And so for our next speaker, let's see, our next speaker, he's an entrepreneur, well-respected, a motivational speaker, sharing his inspirational story and bringing encouragement to those who've lost hope, bringing faith to those both on a national and local television radio level. Through the account of his life, Keenan helps others find their own path and purpose. Excuse me, I've been running around all day. It would be appropriate to say that God put him on earth to be a difference maker. You've most likely seen him at Trump rallies supporting President Trump. He served side by side with President Trump as a strategic initiatives director for Texas for the Trump campaign. But a warm welcome together for my friend, Keenan Williams.
I got wounded in war, guys. No, I actually just had hip replacement 3 weeks ago. I've had both hips replaced in 5 months, 4.5 months. I just didn't say anything about it. But again, guess what? It's part of life. Do we stop because we get wounded or because we're hurting or because we're in pain? No, we don't. We continue to fight, regardless. You know, sometimes when I wake up and I'm in that pain and I still have to do what God has called me to do, I think about the soldiers that are at war. Because they get wounded don't mean they stop fighting the war. And we're in a fight right now. We're in a fight for our country. We're in a fight for our freedom. You know, I like what you said. President Trump was the beginning. He's not the end. Working for President Trump was such an honor. It changed my life in so many dynamic ways that I could probably never have the time to explain it to you. It was an honor for me not only working for him, but also serving the people of our country in the state of Texas. And by the way, we won Texas. We won Texas. And let me tell you, they poured more money into Texas, the Democratic side. They poured more money into Texas, trying to win Texas, than any other state in the entire country. Every week we got updates on how many millions of dollars were being poured into Texas. How many people were being deployed into Texas to try and win certain districts. The Senate, the Congress, everything. They want Texas, but guess what? They can't have Texas. Because of us. Because of places like Redemption Church, who stands up with the Word of God and stands up as patriots and realizes that the church is a part of the fight as well. The church is not excluded from the fight. The church is included. As a matter of fact, the church should be leading the fight. God never chose a king without a priest. He chose the priest, and the priest would have chose the king. The church has to lead the fight because we lead by faith, we lead by principles, we lead by morals, we lead by integrity, we lead by dignity. It does not mean that we lead by perfection. It means that we lead God's way, full of grace, full of truth, full of understanding, full of compassion, but yet full of fire, and knowing that we win in the end. That's why the church has to be involved. That's why I so appreciate it when I see churches like Redemption and my church. I forgot the name of my church. I've been going there for 10 years. My church, Pastor Robert Morris, who stands up and fights for patriotism. Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I go to Gateway, guys. 10 years, I just remember the name. But I appreciate that because every time I read a part of the Constitution, or I look at the integrity of our country and the laws and all of the things that has been handed down and written by our forefathers, I think about the Word of God. How could I not? So to me, I see the Bible and then I see the Constitution. Because the Constitution is tied to the Bible. Without the Bible, you wouldn't have a Constitution. Our Constitution is 233 years old. It's the oldest Constitution in the entire world. That means it was God-inspired. Every other country changes their Constitution every 17 years. We have had it for 233 years, and it is consistently evolving into the future. Why? Because God had everything to do with it. Now, there's some things that we have to do in our fight, and I'm going to get into that. But first, yes, my name is Keenan Williams. I'm so honored to be here, and I tell people it doesn't matter if there's one person, 500, 5,000, or 100,000. My speech and my passion is the same. It is consistent with who I am and what I stand for. And I stand for Him, and I stand for my Constitution. Therefore, I appreciate you guys having me. It is such an honor to be brought out. The True Texas Project is McCarty. Is she here, Julie?
No, they're not.
Okay, I had a message for her, but she's not here. She must be down in the valley. Okay, I'll get that message to her after this then. So guys, quite a few things. Number one, I get excited the more I learn about America. I get excited the more I learn about how diversified America has always been. I get excited when I learn that part of the history and the things that I have been taught was actually taught to me wrong. And when I find out the truth, I know it's the truth because it stirs me up on the inside. And the Holy Spirit that lives inside of me agrees with what I'm hearing. And I love that. So I spend every day educating people. I spend every day pouring into them what God poured into me through the Republican Party. Because I'm going to let you in on a secret. It wasn't allowed when I was in the Democratic Party. Matter of fact, when I was a part of that party, and I want to share something with you, I have a lot of friends who are Democrats. I have a lot of friends who are liberals. I have friends who are independents. I have friends who say they are not a part of any party. They just live here in America, and they want the right thing. And I get that. I understand all phases. So therefore, for me, I don't have an issue with that. Because when I see someone who is not sold out to who we are, it tells me there's an opportunity for me to win them for God. So it makes me want to love them. It makes me want to educate them. Remember, we can't win who we offend. We have done enough offending as Republicans. Because as Republicans, nothing tells us to offend people. It tells us to protect the people. And in a leadership position, it's very hard to be a leader. Because as President Trump was president, he didn't just have to make decisions for the Republican Party. He had to make decisions for we the people. But he made those decisions from the views and the perspective of a Republican, from the belief system of a Republican, because it's not just what we look like, it's who we are. We eat and breathe conservatism. We eat and breathe being patriots. It's what we stand for. So every day I try as hard as I possibly can, and every opportunity that presents itself, to win someone from the other side to our side. Because I remember the days when God loved me where I was at, when I was an idiot, when I made idiotic decisions and foolishness and drinking and doing all the things that God said not to do. He still died for me while I was yet a sinner. You know, sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we forget that He loved us exactly where we were. Matter of fact, I realize that it's the goodness of God that brings a man into repentance. It's not the condemnation from God. Jesus says, I didn't come to condemn the world. I came to save the world from sin. Lady at the well, I don't need to remind you of all the wrong things you've done. I need to let you know that I knew you would do it before you did it. And I purchased you with a price. And you are so valuable to me I'm here just to see you and tell you that I love you. And that one lady got saved and changed the whole village. Just one. See, it doesn't take all of us. It doesn't take all of us in the room to make a difference, even though we're here to make a difference. We can love on one person at a gas station to show them who we are as conservatives, that we really care about our Second Amendment rights and we care about being pro-life because we believe that every child that is in the womb has been called by God. There are no mistakes when it comes to children. We believe that. We fight for that. When they learn that, when they're willing to listen to us, and they're not going to listen to us as long as we continue to bash them. See, I don't fight people, I fight policies. I don't fight people, I fight the good fight of faith. Because in the good fight of faith, there's no person in front of me. I fight the policies. I fight for the country. I don't take it personal because someone is in opposition to who I am. Matter of fact, it's so cool for me, when I learned how to embrace the differences of one another. How to embrace an individual because they were white, black, or brown. How to embrace an individual because they spoke English or didn't speak English. And as I began to embrace them, he who was in me was greater than he who was in the world. And when I embraced him, he embraced them. And then all of a sudden, they start asking these questions like, why do you believe what you believe? Why do you say what you say? And we find a place of commonality to where they soon begin to get convinced that they're Republicans as well. That's how I was born to the Republican Party, because I was always a Republican. But I was taught as a minority, as a black man, and again, I am an American. I don't say this African-American stuff. I'm not African-American. I don't know anything about Africa, never been there, don't know what kind of shoes they wear, don't know the streets. I don't know anyone in Africa. Matter of fact, they don't even like me over there. So please don't call me an African-American. I'm an American. As I learned about being an American, as I learned about my true Americanism, as I begin to research and dissect, and I begin to find people like Frederick Douglass who convened and conversed with Abraham Lincoln, who came out of slavery, and 5 years later, taught himself to read and write, and a man saw him, the general said, you speak the king's language. You are so articulate. You have to meet the president. Let me tell you something. Excellence demands a door. Excellence will create one when there is not one. Excellence in honor will take you to a place in your life that your gift will not take you. Frederick Douglass believed, he said, look, I have nothing bitter in my heart. God was not bitter, Joseph was not bitter, and neither will I. Matter of fact, Frederick Douglass said, he says, I know no law of color that supersedes the law of humanity itself. What he was saying is that he was afraid that when the blacks were freed from slavery, because he knew it was coming, that they would take on the sense of being victims. He said that's the worst thing that could ever happen. Can I tell you guys something? Sometimes I run in and talk with my Republican friends, and they sound like victims. We need to listen to our rhetoric. We're not victims, we're victors. When I study men like Abraham Lincoln, who said if I had 45 minutes to chop down a tree, I spend the first 30 minutes sharpening my axe. Preparation is the key to success. Preparation is the proof of your faith. Yes, Joe Biden is in office. Do I like Joe Biden? No. Do I like his policies? No, that's to go without saying. I honor the office of the presidency. I honor the office of the presidency because guess what? God is going to put the right man in that office. So right now we have to start preparing for 2024. How are we going to do that? By winning as many people to the Republican Party so that when it comes time to vote, we don't have to worry about them voting for the other side. They're on our side. Because at the end of the day, I have found that most minorities, probably 80% of minorities, and I know this is not just about minorities, but here's the reality. Joe Biden and the Democratic Party was very smart, very strategic. They were liars and they were thieves and they were cheaters, but they were still strategic. They went after the minority vote. and they played on the emotions of the minorities who didn't really know the truth. Well, what is the truth? The truth is this: all minorities were Republicans prior to the 60s. Not some, but all. The truth was this: when the Ku Klux Klan was formed out of the Deep South, it formed to kill Republicans, not to kill blacks. The reason they were killing the blacks because they knew that the blacks were Republicans and they couldn't identify with the whites whether they were Republican or Democrat. Did you know that? So they concluded, we know that all blacks are Republicans, so let's just kill all of them. These are truths that need to be told. These are things that people need to talk about. The Deep South. See, we got the story here in the South from the losers. Isn't it crazy? The losers wrote our history here in the South. It's no wonder why so many people feel like victims and not victors. This will eradicate a lot of the situations that we're having out there. When we talk about the importance of the Republican Party being chosen by 14 black men started the Republican Party in the state of Texas. Why is that? Even Malcolm X, the man who holds his fist up, and I didn't agree with a lot of things that he said. I disagree with most of what he said because he was very violent. But he was very intelligent. He said in 1964, he said, blacks, if you vote for another Democrat, you have failed your race. They promise you what they're going to do before they get in office, and when they get in office, you're the last one on the agenda. We need to capitalize on these things. We need to share with people the truth about our forefathers. Our forefathers were not just one color and not just rich or poor. Our forefathers were Americans. They were Christians who set the foundation on the Word of God, who fought to do the right thing. Slavery was never about a color in the first place. It was about economical empowerment. That's why the United States was the very first country to ban the slave trade. Did you know that? The United States was. The United States was also a country where Massachusetts and Maryland, blacks could vote there. There was no such thing as slavery in those states. But I also realized that some parts of America, the heart and the head had to finally catch up. You know, it's like your parents, as a parent, you make bad decisions, and then as you get older, you realize, man, I didn't do that right with my child. It's the same way with America. America has made mistakes. But if America is the greatest place on earth, that's why people are fighting to get here. I tell people all the time, if you don't like it here, man, I tell you what, I'll give you Southwest, $99, you can go wherever you want to go. You'll be back in 30 days. You're crying about, oh, America's a horrible place. No, it's not. I heard a guy on national television, this blew me away. This is a black guy. He says, when has America ever been great for me? He was mocking President Trump. And here's the ironic part. This guy was worth about $40 million. And I looked at him and I said to myself, I couldn't say anything because of the audience. I said to myself, did he really have the audacity to say, when has America ever been great to him that he's worth $40 million? And doesn't even have a college degree? America was great to you, son. So these are things that we have to talk about. We need to have real conversations. I do a lot of studying. I look at things like George Washington crossing the Delaware. I've talked about it before. I will continue to talk about it. On the front of the Delaware, there are two black men on the ship. Very front of the Delaware, leading the ship. And they were not slaves. They were free black men fighting for America. Prince Whipple and Prince Esteban. Front of the ship. In the middle of the ship was a woman. Did you know that? Look at the painting. The George Washington crossing the Delaware. Middle of the ship. Very middle. Right behind George Washington to the left. Look, she's got a hood on. It is a woman rowing the ship. Fighting for our country. Fighting for our country. That painting was painted by the Europeans to encourage other Europeans to say, look what America has done. They've come together, black, white, women, churches, all colors, creeds, and shapes have come together to win the American Revolution. Because in America, that's what we do when it's time to fight. We come together. Why do you think the other side is driving division? Black lives matter. I don't need you to tell me that my life matters. The Word of God told me that my life mattered. And I used to argue the fact and say, well, if you say black lives matter, then why can't he say white lives matter? And then he's going to say Spanish lives matter. And then someone else is going to say Asian lives. These are words of division. It's very strategic. It's sort of like Planned Parenthood. Margaret Sanger was smart. She called it Planned Parenthood because it was designed for the hood. Isn't it amazing? So, I refuse to let the other side outsmart me. And they cannot outsmart any of us. Because we understand the purpose of the Constitution, which is to create freedom. I love when I think about and I look at people, for instance, Crispus Attucks. Do you guys know who that is? You should know. We should all know this. Crispus Attucks was the very first person to die in the American Revolution. And guess what? He was a free black man who was fighting for America. Very first man. I look at people like Benjamin Banneker. Benjamin Banneker was one of the smartest scientists in the entire world, and he educated himself. As a matter of fact, they put him on the same scale as Benjamin Franklin. We're talking about a man who was freed from slavery and educated himself to the point to where he looked at a watch and went home and carved out a wooden watch. All of the dials, everything on the inside, he tore it apart, and he put a wooden watch together that was 1 second off of the time of the original watch. And he educated himself. Why don't we know these things? You know why we don't know these things? Because they don't want us to know the truth. Because when we know the truth that we've all fought together for all of these years, our forefathers fought together, black and white, churches. Look at the church at, Clark. That's why I like this church. He was pastoring a mixed church in the 1700s. Reverend Jonas Clark. Anything I tell you is Googleable. I'm Googleable as well. Reverend Jonas Clark was pastoring a mixed church. And John Adams and John Hancock went to where he was, and that's why the British went there, because they were looking for them. And in the middle of church, Reverend Jonas Clark said, it's time to fight. And the men got their guns, and they went out and they fought the Battle of Lexington, and they won. What they don't tell us is there were black and whites fighting together. I look at people from 1785, I think about men. These men encourage me. They encourage me to know that America is truly the greatest place on earth. We're just not being told the truth. But as Republicans, it is our duty to tell the truth to the rest of America so that they will know what our country stands for. We allowed President Woodrow Wilson to go into office in 1903, and he moved out of office 1,500 blacks who were serving in government offices. 1,500 and left one. And then changed the history books. He was the very first president to ever show a movie in the White House. And guess what movie he showed? The Birth of a Nation, the Ku Klux Klan. But yet people have been bamboozled into thinking that the Democratic Party is for the minorities. Matter of fact, he was a historian, and he was so good at what he did, he removed one of the textbooks out of the schools. It was called The Black Patriots of the American Revolution. He left one black man in office. He said, he will be my token Negro. Everyone else has to go. And he began to change history. That's why we have to have lawmakers. We have to have teachers. We have to have principals. We have to have people that are Republicans that when they know the truth, they will tell the truth from the bottom to the top. That's what's going to make America great again. When everyone knows that America is a God-fearing country, and that we are going to fight for what's right. I love my country. I have a father who is now a Republican. He's 76 years old. Man, he used to talk so bad about President Trump. You know, I had to hold my tongue, right? Yeah, I'll just listen. It's okay. Let me see how to come to my dad, because he's my dad, so I have to honor him, right? So there's some wisdom there. I said, God, I need you to give me the wisdom on how to have a correct conversation with my father. Respect him for what he's sharing, but tell him the truth. And it was about a year later in the President Trump's office. He calls me one day and says, you know, I think you're right about President Trump. I said, I know. I said, I'm on the way to your house. I get to the house and we had a long conversation. And he tells me I've never voted. And I went to my car and got a green voter registration card out. And I brought it in and I signed him up to vote. And I said, how are you going to vote? He said, son, I think I'm going to vote Republican. I said, do it all the way down the ticket. Go from the top to the bottom. And I began to educate my father on who Republicans were, and it all began to make sense to him. And he asked me a question. He says, why didn't I know that? Why didn't I know that we shared the same belief systems? This is why he didn't know. Because the Republican Party failed in building relationships in so many communities. We got entitled. It's called pride. But right now is a great opportunity. God is giving us all an opportunity right now. See, we're being squeezed. Being squeezed is not a horrible thing. Because when we get squeezed, you'll definitely know what's in you, because what's in you will come out of it. There's nothing wrong with pressure. We're in the process of incubation right now in America. Republicans, we're either going to come out shining, or those who are not really Republicans will be burned up in the fire. But this is an opportunity for us. This is an opportunity for us to rise to the top, because in these incubating states, in crisis situations, is where God uses the men and women whose hearts are right, and he raises them up in leadership positions to where people in the world will begin to look at them and believe them. But they're not going to do it as long as we're fighting the wrong way. We've been fighting the wrong way. We got to start fighting the right way. I love people enough to want them to go to heaven. I also love them enough to where I want them to become a Republican. Because it hurts my heart when I go into my community that I grew up in. And everyone has Democratic signs, no Republican signs. Because there was no Republican coming to my door when I was a child. I believe if a Republican had come to my door as a congressman, a senator, state rep, city councilman, if one had come to my door and knocked on my door and had a conversation with Keenan Williams at an early age, I would have become one. I refuse to let that happen to someone else. So I will spend my days door knocking and loving on people at gas stations and going to rec centers, going to Democratic functions. I'm the only man that has spoken at an NAACP event as a Republican. Only one. But I made them honor their bylaws, which says they're bipartisan. This is who you are, and I want to speak there. I knew that because I was a vice president for the NAACP for 4 or 5 years. I can't remember. See, as a Republican, I learned how to work the law. So I made them honor the law, and I was one of the speakers at their event. And boy, a lot of people looked at me crazy. But I can't tell you the ones that handed me their cards under the table. I can't tell you the ones who said, are you on Facebook? Let me message you. I can't tell you the ones that reached out to me and asked me the question, why are you a Republican? Why do you support the Republican Party? And man, that's all I needed to hear, because it gave me the opportunity to love on them and minister to them the way God loved and ministered to me. One of the guys, he's with Black Lives Matter. He and I have met 3 times already. He's a part of that group, he's a part of another group, and I won't say the name because I don't want to tag him. But now we're talking. He sent me a message through Messenger on Facebook one day. And before I responded, I knew who he was. And now we've met 3 different times. He's a Republican. But now he's trying to figure out how he's going to tell people that the Republican Party is the right party. Because that's a big ship to turn. And I told him, you have my support 100%. My question to you is, does he have yours? As an American, a few more minutes, is that okay? How long have I been talking? Not long enough. Stop. Republicans, You know, I'm so thankful for our president who started the fight that we have to finish. He started the fight against criminal justice reform. He started fighting the things that really matter to the people that don't understand tax cuts. See, we understand, I have a business here in Frisco. I have a couple of companies. I own Waterford Counseling, one of my counseling facilities here in Frisco. I have business in Collin County. I understand tax cuts. I hate making money and giving 40% to the government. I try to find every way I can to write it off. They can get mad at me all they want. It doesn't matter. But President Trump started dealing with issues and situations that address minority communities to let them know that, hey, I care. But he got caught up in some things. President Trump did his job. President Trump is never the guy to speak with compassion or to say, I'm sorry. He's a New Yorker, he's a businessman. But he laid the map out for us as Republicans and said, if you follow what I'm setting in place, we will win this country back. That's why he dealt with criminal justice reform. That's why he relieved historically black colleges of $322 million of debt, pulled a man from Thurgood Marshall School of Law in Houston, brought him to the White House, and said, don't you ever let them fail again. He signed a 10-year Senate deal to fund historically black colleges. See, those are things that are not talked about. President Trump is the only president that has exonerated and got more men, African Americans, not African Americans, blacks. I've been seeing that stuff been put in my head. Out of prison than any other president in the United States of America. Within the first 4 months when he signed the First Step Act, over 4,000 men, over 6,000 men had been released from prison. 91% were black. 91% that had been wrongly convicted. And listen to me, we don't have systemic racism. We have systemic failure. We do not have systemic racism. We have systemic failure. That's why he addressed those situations, so that we could continue the fight. It's irritating knowing that you work hard, you pay your taxes, you live with moral standards, but yet you go to an apartment complex and they say you can't live here because you've been to prison. See, sometimes I used to say that America wants me to forgive America, but when will America forgive me? Some of you probably live on, what does it have to do with you? Those that know me know I spent 6 years in prison. And I'm the only ex-felon to ever work for the president. As a strategic director, the only one in the history, I've made history working for President Trump. And I'm not bragging on me, I'm bragging on God, and I'm bragging on President Trump. I'm bragging on the team that he put in place that showed that he's not a racist, that proved that he has no discrimination in his heart. His only discrimination is this: if you're not a thinker, if you're not about business, he's got a problem with you. President Trump calls all of his children starting at 5:30 a.m., and each one individually has to give him the plan for the rest of the day. Literally, he does that every single morning. He's a businessman. That's what we needed in America. So I'm going to continue to fight. There's a lot of things in criminal justice reform that I'm going to fight. It's the fight that I choose to fight because I was there. Yes. Thank you. I'm going to fight to make as many people Republicans as I possibly can. I'm going to fight to make as many people who are homeless to get into a home. But not just get into a home, but I want to teach them how to think, because I know what it's like to be homeless. I was homeless for 40 years. I know what it's like to be stuck smoking crack cocaine because I was a crackhead for 7 years. I get it, I understand it, but God chose me for a time such as this. And delivered me and set me free. I didn't have to go to 12 steps. I took one step in Jesus Christ in 1996. And he showed me that greater is he that's in me than he that's in the world. And I looked at crack cocaine in my hand and said, God, how can someone so big be controlled by something so small? He said, it can't, because you created out of my image and my likeness. And when I took on the identity that he gave me, I haven't even had a drink since 1993. I haven't had a drug since 1993. I took one step ahead, and that's it. It was done. 2 minutes of closing here. So that's why I'm passionate about people who are homeless, people that are in prison. I go to prison, let me tell you something. I had over 378 letters written to parents at home from guys in prison that I turned into Republicans. They wrote their parents and said, vote for President Trump. They wrote their wives, vote for President Trump. The Republican Party is the true party of America. Why? Because I didn't go in and offend them. I went in and I educated them. Education is the key to transformation. God educated me, and I'm going to educate them. Thank you guys so much. I honor truth. I love truth. You know, before I even agreed with Chris, I called a few people and said, what do you know about this True Texas project? He said, man, it's the real deal. He said, those guys are really conservative. I said, man, that's my group. I said, that's my group. And she had an accident today in her car. She's okay, Charlene, my wonderful sweetheart. She had to pull over in Legacy West because the car wouldn't drive. I was at my office. I jumped in the car, had one of my guys put a tag on it, ran and grabbed her, ran to the house, changed clothes, and we're here. You know why? Because as patriots, we keep our word. We keep our word. We operate in integrity, regardless of what the cost is. My hip hurts like crazy, but guess what? I made it happen tonight. Thank you guys so much.